Hey friends, my name's Georgie and you are listening to the Just Breathe podcast, where I'll be talking all things breathing to help empower you guys to use the power of your breath to harness your bodies and minds. In today's episode, we're talking all things hypnotherapy. Now, this is a topic that I've always been kind of fascinated by, but I've never really explored it before. So I was really excited to bring someone on the podcast that could help me dive into what hypnotherapy actually is and why it's so beneficial. I feel really lucky that in the last few weeks, I came across Lydia Johnson. So Lydia owns the London Clinic of Hypnotherapy, and she has quite an extensive training under her belt, to say the least, some of which include cognitive hypnotherapy, neurolinguistic programming, meditation, mindfulness, and emotional freedom technique, to name a few. Lydia was inspired herself by how much she benefited from hypnotherapy, and so she trained up and wanted to help people feel those benefits herself. So we had a really interesting conversation about what hypnotherapy can be used for and busted a few myths around what it actually is and what a session actually entails. We talked a lot about conflicted decision-making, anxiety, teen angst, self-sabotage, burnout, as well as Instagram addiction and poor eating habits, and how you can overcome some of those issues with hypnotherapy. We also talked about the connection between the power of the breath and hypnotherapy, particularly in terms of going into a really deep state of relaxation and how the breath can be a really useful tool for that. So it was a really insightful and powerful conversation. It certainly inspired me to go and get some hypnotherapy myself to really experience it after talking with Lydia. So I hope you feel inspired by the end of the conversation. Little bit of housekeeping. If you haven't already, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Just Breathe podcast. Let's keep on building that strong breathing community. The more people becoming empowered by the power of the breath, the better. All right, let's dive right into today's powerful conversation. It's a really interesting one, and I really hope you enjoy it. This is episode 43 of Just Breathe with Lydia Johnson. Hey Lydia, how's it going?
Hey, good, thank you.
Awesome to have you on the podcast. Thanks so much for coming and chatting. I'm really excited to hear about hypnotherapy. I know we chatted a little bit before we started recording, but I've never experienced hypnotherapy before. It's definitely something I'm interested in experiencing. And I'd love to hear a little bit more actually about how you first got into hypnotherapy, or how you found hypnotherapy, what your path was.
Well, thanks so much for inviting me on your show. It's a pleasure to be here and really promote the benefits of hypnotherapy. It's something that's incredibly effective. In periods of life when we feel stuck or on a loop or in a sort of relentless cycle where we feel sort of out of touch with who we are, or we can't find a way forwards. We repeat patterns of behavior time and time again. So hypnotherapy really is that kind of tool to alleviate these kind of issues. I stumbled across hypnotherapy myself as a very kind of wild and vaguely wonderful, but essentially anxious and down and confused, but really trying to navigate a way forwards in a very frenetic world, which was quite a few years ago now, and there was a lot less practitioners available. So I'm loving the way the wellness world has opened up, and it's much more available to all the young youth, and wild adult teens, which is exactly how I would describe myself. And yes, I went to see all sorts of people. I knew I needed help. I just needed some sort of, I suppose, self-discovery, some understanding, some sort of deeper knowledge really of what was really going on and why I was I don't know, relentlessly going out, but not really feeling happy the next day, or being one version of myself to people, and then actually behind closed doors something else, and having to cope with all those trials and tribulations, I suppose, that most people have as they grow up, and how to deal with issues and friendships, relationships. And I kind of had a hunch there was something else, that there was some sort of method in the madness that I could really learn about. And eventually, having gone to see a psychotherapist, I mean, all sorts of people, crystal healer, acupuncturist, dowser, I actually had lunch with a friend, a really old friend who was he worked in the music industry, and he basically told me he'd given up his addiction, and no one could believe it. And so I went and saw the woman the next day, as these things are usually word of mouth. And after seeing her for an hour, I literally felt like this huge shift, and it was quite extraordinary. And I've been kind of, I suppose, I don't really like using the word obsessed, but I suppose I've been obsessed ever since. Whenever I go on holiday, I see my local hypnotherapist. I see one myself, and I am just quite staggered really with the link to mind and body, and the understanding between conscious and subconscious mind. And I just find it fascinating.
Yeah, me too. Wow, that's a extremely relatable story, but incredible as well about that sudden shift, and how the mind is actually so much more malleable than I think we give it credit for, if we're willing and I suppose courageous enough to explore it. How many people do you think are actually sort of ignoring their own minds and sort of playing the ignorance is bliss cards in terms of their own perhaps conscious and subconscious minds?
So really, our state of mind is paramount. And I think a lot of people live in their, what I call kind of Netflix box sets of stories in their heads, which they play on repeat, and wonder why they feel in a certain way, which basically is a deep emotion, constantly, and wonder why they have to self-soothe with techniques such as going out too much, having affairs, taking drugs, online shopping, whatever floats your boat. They're all self-soothing techniques. And when we learn and when we realize that those Netflix box sets, A, make us feel terrible, B, that they've seen them before many, many times, and C, and this is the most crucial point and most controversial, actually, they don't really exist. Mm-hmm. And so, we're all living in these sort of these stories that are, they're intricate, they're incredible. And actually, it's again, which I'm sure you find with your breath work, which I love about breath, is by focusing on our breathing, guess what happens? We get back into the moment, our safest haven. And so it's about, in a session, it's about educating and learning and understanding why we feel a certain way, and whatever we give focus on really kind of creates our world. It's understanding our thoughts. Our thoughts create a whole world around us. This is going to sound cliched, but quality of thoughts is quality of life. So, regardless of whether they've been through some really, horrendous trauma, that it's about overcoming these experiences and allowing them to not define us, but almost, as an experience to grow from, by using the ability of understanding the difference between our conscious and subconscious mind. Mm-hmm. To explain those two a little further, I suppose driving a car is a really sort of regular way of understanding our conscious mind. So, for example, our conscious mind is basically designed to avoid danger, pain, and stay alive. And it's only about 10% of us. So it's brilliant across the road. It's fantastic. In fact, it's happiest it's ever going to be when it's actually driving a car, because it's avoiding the old granny, it's avoiding the red light, it's staying alive and safe. It's plugged in completely. Right. Your subconscious, however, is 90% of you. Your subconscious mind actually remembers how to drive the car and gets you from A to B. So they work really beautifully in unison when they're driving. And often clients say to me, actually, I have amazing thoughts when I drive. Sometimes, things really come together. And the reason for that is because this conscious mind, this thing that kind of goes into overdrive, that sort of ramps up the negative noise, that is actually so plugged in. It's like it gives the subconscious a space to breathe. And we can really sort of listen to our instincts and really get a feel for what we're really feeling about a situation where we might be in conflict, for example. So really, when we're meditating or we're breathing, what we're doing is we're quieting down that conscious mind, aren't we?
Yeah.
And we're connecting with our subconscious, that space here, which is incredibly powerful. Absolutely. And your subconscious is basically your dreams, your creativity, your sense of self, your childhood. It's always on play. And the two need to be aligned, really, and that's when we get to the flow state.
I love that. A vision is sort of coming to mind that I really relate to, and a sort of analogy that thoughts are like clouds in the sky, and that your presence, your true nature is the sky. It's always there, but sometimes the sky, is so cloudy that you can't even see it. The blue is completely lost, and that really helps me to relate to finding those spaces and the gaps between the thoughts, which I think the breath is so incredible for, and it sounds as if hypnotherapy is incredible for as well. I kind of want to backtrack actually for my personal curiosity, and I'm sure many people listening as well, in terms of what hypnotherapy in an essence actually is. I know I definitely straight away get the image of the person being turned into a chicken on the stage. The hanging clock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock.
Yeah.
The classic thing, and I know it's not that at all. So I'd love to know. I know you've explained slightly, but sort of in an essence, what hypnotherapy looks like, what it actually is.
Well, in a sense, I actually don't mind that reference in a way, because it adds this sort of vague mysticism to hypnotherapy itself, which is never a bad thing in terms of sort of attracting clients, I suppose. But it couldn't be further from the truth. And it was always my mission, really, to bring hypnotherapy into like the 21st century. Yeah. My clinic is right in the heart of Soho, quite a vibrant place. It's steering away from sort of Harley Street and doctors in white suits or whatever, and it's really trying to put it into a place where it's understanding what hypnotherapy really is. So yes, I think pendulums are back down in the 50s. The guy called Erickson, who sort of like staring at some dots on the wall, and those are actually still around. And I do use a technique with a light, which is based on one of his. And the whole acting like a chicken thing is very much just a TV show. And all there for show. But I suppose the way I really like to call hypnotherapy, and this is something I'm really exploring at the moment, and I'm really promoting, is what I call hypnotation, because actually I think that's what describes hypnotherapy so much better. Similarly to the word mindfulness, I call that mind management, and I call meditation lying in bed for an extra half hour in the morning. So, it's about reframing these things to actually say what they mean, and so that clients can really understand where that goes. So with hypnotation, or you can call it hypnotherapy, we have some really beautiful music that the client is allowed to choose themselves, or I've got an amazing selection here. And we really go to that lovely, relaxed space and really let go of a conscious mind. You can imagine your mind's like a radio, for example, and you fine tune away any thoughts, any day-to-dayness, how they got there, what they're doing later, that, or skepticism, or who I am, or any of that stuff has to just really be parked at the door. And then we really focus on just going to that space. So we use breath, we use, sort of going down to massaging the vagus nerve, even understanding how your nervous system works. We relax each body part, and then we go to this wonderful space that I create for them, like a visual, I suppose, depending on what the client's needs are. We can actually even do sort of past, regression if there's been trauma as a child, but but also we can actually focus on letting go of the blocks, the mental blocks, the cycles, the loops that get in the way, the limiting beliefs of just moving forwards, and that might be imposter syndrome, it might be jealousy in a relationship, it might be overeating, undereating, or letting go of constantly being on Instagram, anything destructive, all these very modern, I suppose, up-to-date afflictions that we sort of get completely ensconced in. So yes, and that's all recorded, and it's this lovely, it's like a meditation hypnotherapy, and it's the power of suggestion and being susceptible when you're really tapped into your conscious mind does amazing things. And I think the best way to describe hypnotherapy is giving you the spatial awareness to make the right decision in the real world. And that might be right decision thinking. It might be walking past the newsagents and not buying a packet of cigarettes. It might be moderately drinking. It might be letting go of a past love, which was too codependent, for example.
Yeah.
We have many self-soothing techniques which just don't work anymore, and we end up functioning on these outdated systems that we might have picked up when we were a child or even a teenager, and using them in your 40s, for example, just doesn't really cut the mustard anymore. No. So yeah, it's fascinating. I love it because it's so effective, useful, and practical, solution focused.
Now, at what point does one of these, I love the way you call them, self-soothing techniques, whether that be drinking, online shopping, sex, whatever. At what point does a self-soothing mechanism turn into an addiction, do you think?
Well, I think that sometimes they start off and they work quite well. It's quite effective. But I think after a period of time, and if it's going on for too long and it's not working and we're feeling low or anxious, or the relationship isn't working out, or we've got too much emphasis on our weight, big or small, these self-soothing techniques become detrimental to our well-being. We're so incredible at creating these amazing techniques, whether it's over-exercising or, relentlessly sort of, just sort of procrastinating,
Yeah.
Anything. That's a self-soothing technique that's based on fear, So it's about understanding the series of events of why you're doing it. So every single thought you have actually creates a feeling. No thoughts get away. Okay, every thought you have creates a feeling, which actually has a physical effect on your body. So think, butterflies when nervous, going red when shy, crying when sad, feeling turned on sexually. We all know what that feels like. These are all from one thought. But I still find that incredible. Every time I say it, it still excites me. That mind and body.
Yeah, I've just written that down because that is gold.
It is, right? And then we go thoughts, feelings, feeling in the body. Then we go down to an emotion and deep emotion. When we're in deep emotion, we need to be soothed. And that's when we develop these tactics. So we don't realize it's our thoughts that are creating this. So to really get back to basics and really find the effective tool, we need to nip the thoughts in the bud before they go down for deep emotion. Otherwise, we're going to be on this, so it's about creating a kind and supportive culture in your own head, allowing only the supportive thoughts to come in. I'm not talking being positive all the time because that's absolutely ludicrous. But
it's another self-soothing technique, really, right? Is false positivity. Yeah,
I suppose it is. And there's a lot of it out there. I think it's about being supportive, to yourself. And for example, let's say I thought is like, oh, I look terrible in these jeans, they just make me look big, for example. Is that thought supportive? No. Okay. So when that thought comes in, really what you want to do is just let it go. Otherwise you go, oh my God, I've put on weight. Oh my God, I need to go on a diet. That's actually going to release stress hormones, which is going to release cortisol, which by the way makes you put on weight. And then we'll go down to a deep emotion. And in that deep emotion, you might become incredibly restrictive. That's your way of coping. So really, we didn't need to entertain that thought in the first place. We could have just let it go. And of course, I'm sure, as you know, meditation exercises the muscle you need in your brain to let go of those non-supportive thoughts.
Absolutely.
So the two work really well together. Hence
it's so relatable with the breath. My goodness. I mean, what the sort of umbrella word that's coming to me here is awareness. That it's all about awareness. And I say to every single one of my clients that if you can increase your awareness by practicing, focusing on something as constant and simple as the breath, then you have the power to notice when something is out of balance, to notice when you need to regulate before it becomes chronic. And the more awareness you have of your own body and mind, the more autonomy and power you have over your own health again. And it's that power to make a choice, and the realization that actually you have a choice, and that you don't need to be dictated and sort of almost thrown around like a dodgem by your circumstances and by that which you have no control over, and actually harnessing the most important biological function we have, which is the breath. And, I sort of like to say that we have around, 24 to 26,000 breaths that we take per day, and that every single one of those breaths is a chance to make a different choice, because every emotional state has a breathing pattern. So if you change your breathing pattern, you can shift your emotional state. It is fascinating in terms of the neuroplasticity, and the ability to sort of those that saying of neurons that wire together, fire together, and that sort of rewiring new neural pathways. I'm sure we'll go on to talk about the nervous system and the vagus nerve you've mentioned already. The massaging of the vagus nerve is really, really crucial. It's so empowering. All of this stuff is so empowering, even though you are almost surrendering your power to the hypnotherapist, to say, okay, take me to this new place, allow me to explore this new, perhaps scary realm that I haven't visited yet, to create a shift and a change. But ultimately, I suppose you're really just guiding and creating space. The change is really within the person experiencing the hypnotherapy. Is that what you'd say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not, I'm not a magic wand. We have to work together. And the session that I kind of specialize in my signature is a 3-hour breakthrough, and that is 3 hours so we can really get to know each other well. And I think it's really important that I do that so that I get to understand their needs, that they're kind of where they need to go, what their triggers are, so that they can feel really safe, and I know which place to take them to, and establishing that notion, those nuances, the themes in their life, their fears, their limiting beliefs, their kind of areas that they need to sort of more work on, and giving them a new tool system. There's definitely not a blame culture either. Hypnotherapy is about your life in the here and now, and finding a way forward. So yeah, it's crucial to spend that time. And of course as well, we talk on the phone previously just to make sure that they're ready, they understand. But ultimately, it's incredibly safe. It's 100% safe, and because everything is unfortunately, again, going back to the pendulums and chickens and things, that's the sort of the confusion area, which does sustain. So I do spend quite a lot of my time explaining that whole notion, although it is on my website, by the way. But yes, the zany reputation can sort of infiltrate itself still. But yeah, I'm just here as a sort of, as a guide really into them understanding more about their subconscious and conscious mind as an individual, as a unique person, and creating a session that's completely bespoke to them, and no two sessions are ever the same.
No, I'm sure they're not. And it's really interesting what you said about emotions and their connection to the physical body. I'm curious to know, have you ever experienced clients sort of holding themselves differently, evoking different body language post-session, or sort of post-working with hypnotherapy? Do they find a difference in the sensations of their physical body?
Well, I think understandably during a session, obviously they start to relax more as time goes on. I do get a lot of feedback, which is lovely, and it's usually a shift. And I don't really think they can pinpoint where it is. It might be physical, it might be emotional, mental. It's kind of linking it all together. You know, and that's, I think, what's the sort of key to it, and the specialness, the kind of what's the word, the kind of crucial sort of tipping point, I suppose, or the sort of the alignment of what's going on. It's connecting mind and body, conscious and subconscious, which, unless you understand how that works, you know, they don't teach this stuff in schools or uni particularly, you know, it's not, you have to really do the work yourself, don't you, to an understanding. And that's that's where the you know, the difference is really apparent, and it's sort of, you can't quite put your finger on it.
That's a great point, actually. There was a wonderful podcast I listened to a few days ago from the Huberman Lab. He was actually talking about mind and body. He was talking about it in terms of fitness, but he was saying how there is no difference. It's all neural in terms of how the nervous system, and it's particularly the vagus nerve, that 10th cranial nerve that runs all the way down the spinal cord, is so influential in so many bodily systems. And that a big mistake a lot of people make is they'll sort of say, okay, I'm going to really sort out my diet. But they forget about the fitness or their mental approach even, or they'll say, I'm really going to sort out my fitness or one area or one sector. And when actually it's his point, and a very good point to remember, I think, and something I think you're getting at it as that whole and as one, is that everything is neural because of how influential the nervous system is on every single biological function in our bodies.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and also our thoughts create our energy around us, and our nervous system is almost like a sponge, isn't it? It kind of picks up on all these things. We're so in sort of, I think we're so much more sensitive than we realize, you know, and just even sort of, I strongly believe, and this isn't meant to sound quirky or kooky, but we've got a lot of powers we just don't remember how to access. And, you know, whether, you know, telepathy is a sign of that, or manifestation, or instinct, you know, I think that they sort of err on the side of all these kind of things we just can't quite put our finger on. But our nervous system is a real I don't know, meter, I suppose, isn't it? And how we feel. And if you're a sensitive creature, you know, our nervous system get quite frazzled quite quickly. And I have a lot of clients actually who are real empaths, who pick up on all sorts of people's energies, and it's really tiring for them. So something like hypnotherapy can be incredibly relieving.
Oh, absolutely. And I remember you saying before, and before we were recording as well, about the particular effect right now of the pandemic on seeing a lot of overeating and undereating in your clients, as well as relationship issues, and that being at the forefront. And that's really interesting, especially in terms of the eating and how we nourish and nurture our bodies, because everything you put in your mouth is a choice, whether we realize it or not, of course, in that you can either nourish or you can sort of cause yourself detriment. Yeah,
I mean, of course, the pandemic, we've been spending so much time at home, and yes, food, the thing about eating and food is we need to eat. There's no two ways about it. It's not like, you know, whiskey or, you know, I mean, that's sort of kind of, you know, unnecessary. And so to give up alcohol, actually, you know, if someone is really suffering with alcoholism, you know, giving up alcohol, it's like, right, okay, we have to let that go now. You know, with food, if we're emotionally eating, overeating or undereating, you know, we've still got to eat. We've still got to navigate a way to nourish our bodies, and not have food as a sort of mood, you know. And I suppose, yeah, it's interesting seeing the waves of trends, I suppose, that come in through the door. And at the moment, unfortunately, there's a lot of, wild teens who are using food as a way to self-soothe, not being in the sixth form at school or not seeing their friends. I mean, I think for that age group, it's been really, really hard. And equally, I think adults too. And, emotional eating is huge, along with relationship issues at the moment, because of course we've all been at home. So it's not unsurprising.
No.
But I do see also, I mean, I do keep it quite open. I still see, I mean, but also a lot of, vaccine fear, not, in terms of needles, and things like that. So yeah, it's very interesting what comes up. And that's what I love about hypnotherapy, because it's about conscious and subconscious mind. It's applied to everything, and it's about really defining what that is for each individual, so that, they literally can, you get a letter back, Lydia, I had my vaccine. I never thought this day would happen, and that's really warming and obviously clearly satisfying for me as a practitioner. But yes.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it hugely highlights even the relationship issues to a degree. I'm very much a big believer in that everything is an opportunity for growth, and that I love the phrase, it's not mine, coined by Jim Murphy from Inner Excellence, is there's no failure, only feedback, and that everything is feedback, and that especially with the relationship issues, it must be such an incredible highlighting experience of the relationship with themselves, and how they identify with their entire being. I think that's been flipped on its head a lot. Everyone's perception of reality has been altered in some way during this pandemic, which can be incredibly disruptive for the mind, because we are creatures, of course, of rhythms and habits and cycles. And everyone, it's probably a huge stamp in history, and possibly a first, when every single person in the world has been affected in terms of their sense of reality from this pandemic in some way. And of course, your work just massively is so necessary, and so such a healthy comfort for that, because I suppose left to our own devices, of course we would go for what we are taught from a very young age is a comfort, which when we zoom out is ludicrous, to teach children that they should pick up a chocolate bar when they're feeling sad. And what a ridiculous association,
Yeah, well, that's like treats, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, I think what's interesting about the pandemic is that it's been really, really hard for everyone, because we've had to cope with our thoughts, feelings, emotions, deep emotions, without then sort of going, oh, well, I'm feeling terrible today. Oh, I'll just go shopping, or I'll jump on a plane and see my friend in, I don't know, Paris or wherever, or I'll go on, the kind of, the world was designed for self-soothing,
For avoidance, it sounds like.
Yeah, and actually, really, we've having to do the work at home without realizing. So we're like, okay, I don't, an argument with our half, it's like, well, there's nowhere to go, So what are we doing? We're having to learn how to sort of deal with these and live with someone and communicate effectively without, having a, miscommunication, and realizing that's really going to affect your day, and it's going to affect your well-being, your sense of self. So in a sense, it has, we can reframe it into understanding, well, actually, that's quite interesting. As humans these days, that was never going to happen, was it? I'm not saying I wish I could have done without the pandemic, to be honest, but hypnotherapy hat on, it does. We've had to learn skills that perhaps we didn't even know existed.
Oh, absolutely. And I really want to talk about your program as well, that you mentioned to me before, in terms of turning down negative noise. I think this is a great time to segue into it, in terms of that for many, many people of all ages right now. I don't think the negative noise has ever been so loud, because there's so much instability and uncertainty. And again, it comes back to that feeling of the floor underneath you not being quite stable, because we have lost control, our sense of sort of, okay, I know what's happening, especially for young people, in terms of where their future is going, how they will navigate their future, finances, etc. A lot of that sense of knowing and stability, and this is just the way it is, which I personally don't believe was ever real anyway, has gone. And I think that's a huge opportunity, but of course it can be very, very scary and can cause that negative noise to be at an all-time high. So how do we combat that? What do we do about it? And I'm interested to know as well, because I know hypnotherapy isn't just a 3-hour session. It's something that is integratable into your everyday life. I'm very interested to hear about that as well.
So basically, during lockdown, I designed this course really to open up those the clinic doors to everyone across the UK, and even globally. It's designed to really explain, take out the myth, understand with a really detailed but actually very easily accessible course that doesn't feel like a course. It just feels really interesting. And there's loads of information there. I mean, with hypnotherapy, I deal with meditation, mindfulness, and EFT, emotional freedom technique. And it's all lovely, really clear examples. There's lots of workbooks, videos, meditations, hypnotations. And it's about learning to turn down that negative noise and realizing when it's really on full blast. And sometimes we don't even realize it. And so it's creating an awareness, like you say, an awareness, a kind of model, a understanding, and it's quite relieving. It's sort of almost like a lot of light bulb moments was really the premise for writing it. So yeah, it's available on my Instagram account, which is at London Clinic of Hypnotherapy. It's also on my website, londonclinicofhypnotherapy.com, and yeah, people can access it there.
Yeah, amazing. And I mean, it all comes down to awareness, but definitely building a toolkit of tools and techniques in order to regulate and to somewhat transform into a better version of yourself, a version where you feel you have that core confidence. It's almost like becoming somewhat bulletproof to the circumstances around you. I think that is hugely important, and which is why these courses, these coachings, whatever you choose to do, I think really is the best investment you will ever make in your life. Because if you don't invest in yourself and your health, I said before, it's a bit like trying to build a house on a puddle. The foundation, it will just sink. The foundations are unstable.
Well, I'm currently also recording hypnotations that people can download. So if they're on the go, it's a lot easier because now we're traveling more. It's about creating resilience, creating resilience for that next pandemic that we don't know is around the corner.
Or for the next whatever that we don't know, is how big or how small. It all affects us in different ways, I suppose. And I want to go into to finish off in terms of, you said you can do it sort of walking along, but how integrated can hypnotherapy or self-hypnotherapy become into someone's everyday life?
Well, I use self-hypnosis all the time.
Right.
And I use it when I need to let go of something or I want to change. But obviously, I know a lot about that, but you can actually do it at home and with practice. And as long as you understand how to quieten down your conscious mind. So anyone who's really into meditation will find it very easily to access. Does that answer your question? I got a bit lost on that one.
No, it does. It's interesting. Even I would presume hypnotherapy was me sat with someone opposite me and them guiding me into some sort of trance state.
Yeah. Well, I suppose the difference is with self-hypnosis is that it'll be much more of a kind of, what's the word? I'm losing my train of thought now. Homogenized. No,
yes.
It's less bespoke.
I know what you mean.
A hypnotherapist.
Yeah.
So if it's like, I want to give up drinking, then you can download one easily. But they won't be like, well, every time I see, Sarah, she really triggers, this thing in me where I want to be really naughty or whatever. And so, we are really specific in a session about, letting go of very particular triggers, whereas obviously the ones online will be less so. But I do recommend them. If you want to learn more about hypnotherapy, there's tons on YouTube. There's lots of free stuff on my site. There's lots of amazing hypnotherapists out there. We all work together, and it's all about alleviating any issues and those feelings. You do not have to suffer, and you do not have to struggle through life. There's so much out there, really there is, for incredible support. And once you learn these things, you've got that for life.
That's the thing, and it's the same with breath work in terms of once you have that toolkit, it doesn't go anywhere. It's not a prescription that you have to keep paying for and picking up and anything like that. It's within, and that's what's so empowering about anything mildly holistic, or I don't like the word alternative, but you know what I mean, in terms of non-pharmaceutical, something that is evoked within you. It's so powerful, because once you have logged that and you know that information, it's like brushing your teeth. It's always there, and you have, I almost see it as like a purple light coming into you, that you've inherited a superpower, and that no one can take that away from you because it's there and you know it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the dailiness of the ritual or the practice does sort of stave off the anxiety or the overwhelm, and there is a sort of practice within that. But that becomes like second nature. You really are able to really access the resilience and superpower, like you say.
Amazing. Okay, well, rounding up, you've already said where people can find you, but I know you said you're soon to launch the Turning Down the Noise course, or you've already launched it, and where can people find that?
I've already launched my course. They can find it on my Instagram and my website, and I'm currently just creating some hypnotations so that people can access that without having to come into Soho.
Amazing. And people can just pop you a message on Instagram if they have any questions.
Yeah, we always get back to clients within 24 hours. I love hearing from people. It's all about having, getting in touch and answering any queries that come up. So, great.
Amazing. Lydia, I've learned a lot. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I'm definitely intrigued to jump into some hypnotherapy myself. There's so much to explore. And it's just another amazing tool to help raise the consciousness of the planet. And I just think the work couldn't be more important. So thank you for everything you do. And thank you for chatting to me.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for asking me today.
Thank you.